Weight loss shots have been around for a little while now, but now they're also here in pill form. These oral weight loss medications are GLP-1s, just like their pointier cousins. But the new semaglutide pill from Novo Nordisk and competitors' versions in development are dramatically reshaping the entire weight loss drug landscape. So why are these pills so much more appealing for some patients? How are these pills shaking up the industry, from pharma giants to telehealth startups? And could oral GLP-1 meds increase access to these drugs in the US, a country with sky-high obesity rates? All that and more in this week's status report. A relatively safe, effective weight loss pill has been a goal for the drug industry since, basically forever. There have been several promising attempts over the years, but drug makers struggled to develop a pill that could reliably induce weight loss without causing significant side effects. Side effects up to and including death caused by heart valve damage, which was the case with fen-phen, one of the biggest disasters in pharmaceutical industry history. But then GLP-1s like Ozempic and Zepbound came along, and at long last, the dream had perhaps been realized. Relatively safe, certainly effective weight loss medications. But of course, they were injections, not pills. And that's because they are peptides. And peptides are large molecules that the human stomach does a good job of destroying before they can reach the bloodstream. So it was pretty much just easier for drug companies to start with injections that bypass the stomach entirely and go straight for the bloodstream. However, there is one big problem with injections. A lot of people really don't like needles. And I know that because I am one of those people. I have to psych myself up by listening to Rage Against the Machine on the way to get a flu shot. So to address that potentially large, needle-wary segment of the market, rival GLP-1 manufacturers Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly have been locked in a Cold War space race style competition to develop a pill. Novo and Lilly are serious rivals. I mean, GLP-1 drugs are a big deal. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say they are perhaps one of the most significant developments in pharmaceutical history. And right now, Novo and Lilly are the two top dogs in the GLP-1 game. Novo did hit the market first with injectables, but Lilly has since caught up and surpassed them in sales. The two companies' obesity offerings, Wegovy and Zepbound respectively, are certainly different enough from each other from a patent perspective, but they're still both injectable peptides at the end of the day. With pills, however, the two companies have taken very different approaches. Novo made an oral version of Wegovy with the same active ingredient, semaglutide. To make it effective as a pill, they had to add a compound called SNAC, an acronym that is perhaps a little on the nose, that basically protects the peptide from the digestive system long enough to be absorbed into the bloodstream. But SNAC is far from bulletproof. In fact, the pill version of Wegovy actually contains a much higher dose of semaglutide than injectable versions of the drug, to compensate for how much of the peptide is destroyed in the stomach. But this is also a major drawback for oral Wegovy. Unlike the injectable version of the drug, the pill needs to be taken every day under specific conditions. You have to take it on an empty stomach and wait 30 minutes until eating, and even small deviations from that protocol can diminish its effectiveness. Lilly went an entirely different direction with its GLP-1 weight loss pill, orforglipron, which is expected to be approved by the FDA as early as this month. Orforglipron is not a peptide, it's what's known as a small molecule drug, but without getting too into the weeds here, it basically binds to the same receptors in the body that GLP-1 peptides do and more or less works the same way. The small molecule part here is very important. It means that orforglipron is much more easily absorbed by the body. And that means it doesn't need to be taken on an empty stomach or anything like the Wegovy pill does. Earlier, I spoke with Stat National Biotech reporter Elaine Chen about these new pills and how they may impact accessibility to GLP-1 drugs, the race between Lilly and Novo, and more. But first, Status Report is a weekly video series from Stat. Every week, we bring you the biggest stories in health and medicine, breaking down complex topics, doing dispatches from the most important events in life sciences, and talking with stat reporters and the experts shaping the future of medicine. So please like and subscribe if that all sounds interesting to you. It's a little quick, but it helps us out a lot. And Status Report is now on Instagram. You can follow us there at Status Report IG. Hey, Elaine, thanks so much.
Hi.
So, a central issue for obesity patients when it comes to GLP-1 drugs has long been accessibility. They're expensive, insurance coverage is all over the place, and obesity rates are significantly higher among lower income Americans. Does the introduction of GLP-1 pills move the needle at all here?
I think for some people, the pill might be slightly more affordable, especially if you're buying directly from Novo Nordisk rather than going through insurance. So if you go that route, Novo is selling the pill for between $150 a month to up to $300 a month, depending on the dosage. Whereas if you get the injection, it's a little bit higher at $350 a month. So it's a $50 difference at the highest dose. not a huge difference. It could make a difference on a month-to-month basis. I think that for the most part, though, if you can't afford $350 a month, I think that $300 is probably also pretty unattainable. Again, you're not using insurance, so that doesn't contribute to a deductible or any out-of-pocket maximums. And so far, it's not really clear yet if it's going to affect the price if you use insurance.
Yeah, so you just wrote recently about how that even though Novo Nordisk pretty aggressively cut the price of its even its injectable Wegovy, it really didn't have all that much of an impact on insurance coverage. Why is that?
Yeah, so Novo recently cut the list price of all of its Wegovy Ozempic products, and that could have some effect for patients using insurance. It's a very complicated payment system that we have in the US to pay for drugs, but for if you're using insurance, you usually pay the list price of a drug before you meet the deductible. So if you have a lower list price, that could help a patient because they have to pay less, before they in that pre-deductible hitting phase. Also, if you have a system where you pay co-insurance on drugs, so a certain percentage of the list price of a drug, then a lower list price also helps you there. But overall, if you're thinking about whether this reduction in list price is going to meaningfully increase insurance coverage overall, that's not really clear because, again, going back to this complicated system, the payers, insurers, employers, they pay what's called a net price, which is the list price minus any rebates and discounts, and that's negotiated with the drug company. And Novo has said they don't expect net prices to decrease. So if that's not decreasing, then payers, insurers don't really have much reason to expand coverage.
And another factor that was impacting accessibility wasn't accessible when it's in shortage, right? And a whole cottage industry popped up selling compounded versions of GLP-1s because of those shortages. Do you know if it's easier for production to meet demand with pills versus the auto pens?
I think specifically in the case of the Wegovy pill, there have been concerns actually that those are going to be harder to supply than even the pens in terms of if we're talking about the drug itself. Because the Wegovy pill, as a pill, it's harder for the body to absorb, so it actually requires more of the main pharmaceutical ingredient than the injection. So it's actually quite complex to manufacture and takes a lot of pharmaceutical ingredient to manufacture. So there have been concerns whether Novo would run into troubles with supply there. So far, it seems like they're doing fine. Of course, on the injection side, there is the actual pen device that can cause supply issues. So I think overall, it's not necessarily the case that the pill is easier to manufacture.
Speaking of the telehealth companies, they significantly impacted the whole pricing conversation around GLP-1s, right? Because they came out and not only were their copies, essentially the same product, but came in at a much cheaper price, like even as low as like a third or a quarter of the price of a Wegovy, or brand names Ozempic or Wegovy. What does the introduction of a cheaper brand name pill, starting at $149. So what kind of impact does that have on that whole ecosystem? The telehealth companies and the compounding pharmacies.
Yeah, so definitely the lower the price that Novo Nordisk and these other pharma companies sell their GLP-1 drugs at, the more pressure that puts on the telehealth companies that were making compounded versions. Even Novo Nordisk's CEO, Mike Dustar, recently said that they've learned lessons from what they've seen with compounding. They've seen that people really do need affordable medicines, and that's affected their commercialization strategy. Again, though, you could argue the price still isn't affordable to most Americans, but they have brought their prices down.
So Novo Nordisk, the manufacturer of the Wegovy pill, had a head start on its rival Eli Lilly when it came to the GLP-1 shots. But Eli Lilly caught up and have clearly pulled ahead. But Novo's getting another head start here with the pill. But then again, Lilly's orforglipron could be approved any day now, right? Really? So what could Lilly versus Novo round 2 look like?
Yeah, Lilly has its own GLP-1 pill that we're expecting to potentially be approved this month in March. That could set up a lot more competition again. I think that Novo has already gotten a lot of patients onto its pill. And of course, once you start patients on a product, it's hard to get them to switch. So I think Novo does have an advantage there. It's priced the pill at a lower price than what Lilly has said it will sell its GLP-1 pill at. So Novo has another advantage there. A question that people have is Novo's pill is, because of the chemistry, the type of molecule it is, it has to be taken in the morning, at least 30 minutes before food or drinks other than water. And Lilly's pill does not have those restrictions. It can be taken anytime. So people have wondered whether patients might prefer Lilly's pill instead because of that. But yeah, it's yet to be seen.
Elaine, thanks so much. That was great.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again to Elaine. Okay, so while I was working on this video, I came across an ad spot from Novo Nordisk that was just published to their YouTube channel. Let's take a look.
Overwhelmed? Headlines.
Half of adults will have obesity by 2050.
Is obesity a disease or a choice?
Trends.
The weight loss revolution is here.
And I couldn't help but notice some stylistic similarities with some Super Bowl ads that Hims and Hers have ran.
This is
Like and subscribe.
all that money.
Shots fired? Is this the beginning of some kind of drug industry rap beef? It's worth noting that Novo has sued Hims and Hers for selling copycat versions of Wegovy. So I reached out to Novo Nordisk to ask if this uncanny resemblance was intentional. A company spokesperson told me that they, quote, had this content since 2025 and created a new video for World Obesity Day. There is no connection. Hims and Hers' first ad with this particular aesthetic did run during the 2025 Super Bowl, so I might still keep an eye out for any clapbacks from Hims and Hers. Okay, back to our regularly scheduled programming. Stat and this channel will have continuing coverage of the GLP-1 ecosystem, so be sure to check out statnews.com, and if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It's a little click, but it really helps us out a lot. And next week, we'll be doing something a little different, so be sure to tune in, especially if you happen to be a fan of thrillers starring Harrison Ford and Tommy Lee Jones.